in. Come on, everybody. Because we are going to see a lot of this sort of stuff today, we got a great guest, and we're going to show a lot of clips from a lot of amazing movies and hear a lot of background stuff on the movies. I would like to keep the announcements today to as short a period as we possibly could. So let me call for announcements right here at the beginning so we can get into watching some movies. Announcements? Who's got one? Here we go.
Yeah, my band, Cute Machines, we have a show this Thursday at Cafe P. It's at 9 p.m. with Nomad and Naughty Professor. It's $5. Be there.
Another?
I'm Uriel. I recently started a program that's partnering up with the Boys and Girls Club. If anybody's interested in music education, we're going to be teaching kids how to play any instrument, teaching them how to understand music a lot more. And they recently received a Pro Tools workstation too that was donated to them. So if anybody's interested in going out like once a week to the Boys and Girls Club here in
Frenchman Street?
Yeah, no, not in Frenchman Street. It's somewhere around the area, but just see me after forum.
There he is. Next, please.
What's up, everybody? I'm KO. I have a mixtape that just dropped last Friday called Royal Chief. If you friend me on Facebook, you can get it, but you can also check it out on Bandcamp.com. And another announcement, my boys ECME, they're having a show tomorrow night at the Dragon's Den at like 10, so I appreciate if everybody came through, so some support. Thank you.
Good luck.
In the interest of keeping this as short as possible, I'm not going to use any sentences. Cafe P, Mississippi Rail Company, Yo Jimbo, Friday, $5, MississippiRailCompany.com.
Great.
D1 is playing at Republic this Friday, and Live from New Orleans is streaming it. It starts at 10. Go to livestream.com/Loyola channel, watch it, spread it, tell everyone you know.
There you go.
Everyone should go to the ECME show at the Dragon's Den Tuesday. That's what KO was talking about. And the flyers I was passing out earlier are for the show at the Frat House, which is next Wednesday. I know everybody here loves bounce music. So Sissy Novi's going to be playing. I'm opening for him. And everyone should come out. I have tickets. They're $7 in advance. My name is Ty Billion. My name is the small one on the flyer, not the big one. But anyway, check it out. Come to the show.
Great, great. Okay. Sorry. On the side. Go ahead.
My name is Josh. I'm actually playing a show with 4 other rappers, including Cam Royal from Tulane. We're playing at the Hi-Ho Lounge this Wednesday at 9 o'clock. It's only $5, so if you happen to find yourself there, please come around. Thank you.
Hey, New Orleans Songwriter Festival is going on this week. I'm playing on Saturday. My name is Dustin O'Keefe. There's an open mic night at Blue Nile on Wednesday. Look it up on the website. Thanks.
What's up, guys? My name's Zach Lund. Me and my band are doing a show along with City Lark November 19th at the Howlin' Wolf Den. Information on like cover and time and stuff will be announced later. Thanks.
All right, guys, one more announcement. I'm sorry. At the Republic this Thursday, there's a Welcome Home Wheezy show at ECME. I, myself, and a few other people are going to perform. If y'all can come check that out, too, that would be also be awesome. If you want any more details, just hit me up.
Go ahead.
Hey, y'all. My name's Alex. This weekend, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, actually, the NOLA Indie Rock Collective is doing their festival again. It's going to be at the Saturn Bar, Blue Nile, upstairs, and One Night Jacks. It's about, I think it's 9 or 10 bands playing, and including my band, Sun Hotel, and then bands like Big History, and a whole bunch of other bands. And it should be really cool. Day passes are $7, and then for the whole weekend, it's $11. So, and it's 3 days, so, that makes sense. And then there's drink specials and all that. Yeah.
Great stuff. Okay, everybody, just so you know. Okay, one more. The music news is very, very cool, and this forum is being streamed live on the web, so you may see yourself on there. It'll get edited and popped up soon. By the way, just so you all know, there are still some seats in the Introduction to Digital Filmmaking course where we really get into the beginnings of dealing with film in this new digital age on the little bitty screens and on the big screens. One thing I'd like to do to introduce our guest this evening, who is a unit publicist. It's a very important, a very unique role within a film company that happens on the set of a film. So you've been watching a bit of Gladiator up here, for which our guest was unit publicist. And Here we go. To give you an idea of what a publicist does, you probably know the movie. You probably know how it goes on. But the way it gets presented to the public to show people in a very brief period of time what the movie is like and what they can expect is part of the responsibility of a unit publicist. And this is the trailer from the same movie you just saw.
Helmet and tell me your name.
My name is Gladiator. Father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance.
Today I saw a slave become more powerful than the Emperor of Rome.
They said you were a giant. I shall cheer for you.
At my signal, unleash hell. What we do in life echoes in eternity.
And on that note, I'd like to introduce you to Rob Harris. Before we get into your career in the arts and the way you get from one thing to another, we were talking earlier. I told Rob I liked Gladiator so much because I liked the way it was so dirty, that the people were so real because of how dirty they looked and how their occupation looked real because they were dirty and looked like they worked at their gig. Tell us some about that. By the way, he's on the set every single day. His job is to walk around, talk to the actors, talk to the studio, talk to the director, and tell people what goes on.
What that means is I have absolutely nothing to do with the making of the movie. I just hang out with them. But, so the movie, in its conception, it was a hugely expensive movie, and it was a very risky movie for DreamWorks to do, because it was of a genre that really hadn't been seen in quite some time, maybe since Spartacus, and hadn't been successful, certainly until then. So we were talking earlier when you said, you love how dirty it looks, and I was saying that the realism had to be there. You couldn't just do a sort of passion play. It had to make you feel like you were there. And they were hoping that the special effects would later recreate Rome, the visual effects, which it did. But for some of the battle scenes, gosh, I'm louder all of a sudden. For some of the battle scenes, the big battle scene in particular, they had huge dormitory-style setups in the middle of the forest, the burned woods. And they would put these thousands of extras and some of the principals through the works. They had amputee units to whom they would apply bloody makeup to make it look as if they had just lost their limbs. They had all sorts of, you'd see before the shooting, you'd see a guy walking around with an arrow through his chest, accompanied by another guy with a split skull holding an axe that's eventually going to go in the skull. They went to enormous lengths, makeup-wise and prosthetics-wise, to get that sense of realism, including at the end of the process, there was a mud bath that all of the actors had to go through, and depending on your state of injury or life, they would throw the whole bucket on you, or they just apply strategically, here or there. But it was an elaborate process to get here, and it took about a month to film those battle scenes.
So as a unit publicist, you are, though you're not making the movie, you're shaping the perception of the public outside to say this is what the movie is actually about.
Yeah, I mean, my job basically is interpreting the most exploitable elements of the film, putting those in press releases, going out with an EPK crew to shoot behind the scenes of some of the more important elements, and just sort of setting up the marketing campaign for the movie at the earliest stages. Jim exaggerates the importance of my job, but the uniqueness is that I'm the only person there who is a representative of the marketing division of the studios. So while everybody else is thinking about making the movie and their various responsibilities in making the movie, I'm thinking about how are we going to sell this.
A very important part of the thing, especially with something as shaky and scary as a Gladiator movie.
There you go.
But here, looking at you, being on the set, walking around with Russell Crowe, who I understand is very demanding, from one of the biggest movies to happen in recent years, when you were a youngster, I mean, these are people at the beginning of their careers. When you were a youngster in, say, high school, were you doing anything that you think actually helped lead you along this path toward this kind of a career?
You know, in retrospect, sure, but I had no direction in high school, and we talked earlier, I had always written, so that was my entree into the movie business, not quite by design, but a little bit more than by accident. And I started out as a journalist and started out as a journalism major when I graduated, and just hated it. It was just the most boring. I don't mean to offend any journalism majors, if any of you are out there, but the classes that I took were dreadful.
But you ended up with a degree in what?
Sociology, because I was always interested in people. I had a minor in psychology and another minor in English literature, and I think they all helped. I mean, when you get into the movie business, it's all about what you can bring to the job, and it's more than just technical knowledge. You're a history major. You bring, that depth of understanding about world history. If you're, a psychology major, you say, well, that person's got a particular quirk because, and you use that in your field. To me, the greatest thing that you can, and film majors are terrific because they give you a foundation that I didn't really have. I learned as I went along. But I think you also need a broad base of interests, if not knowledge, that give you something to contribute to the process, and it makes you just more, fun to be around.
Well, I know that even sociology didn't set well with you, but as you went through a progression of different things, it's and you guys who are in music industry studies can particularly kind of empathize with this. At one point, Rob found himself working on a horse ranch, but wanted to write something else. And how did this begin your step into this career?
Oh gosh, well I started, I'd always written, and I found myself after college with a couple of different social work jobs, which sociology will lead you to. And at the same time, I met a woman who had a couple of horses, and we bought a property and started raising Appaloosas and quarter horses. And for a lark, I started listening to country music, and I heard the stories in country music. And to me, I've always been interested in story, and I think that to me the foundation of any kind of creative expression, whether you're painting, whether you're doing music, whatever, is story. You're conveying something that that has content and sometimes a beginning, middle, and end. But so I started off writing country music,
and how long was your career? You moved you went to Nashville, and
I went to Nashville thinking that I was going to be a permanent resident there. I lasted about 6 weeks, and I later worked on a movie with Chris Christopherson. I told him I'd moved to Nashville to become the next him, and he said, "Oh, how long were you there?" I said, "Oh, about 6 weeks. Well, you got to stick it out longer than 6 weeks. So my country music career was short-lived, but it led me to realizing that each writing art form has a structure, and you learn from each structure, and you can, once you realize that there is a form, you can plug your stories into any form.
Well, I think that's one of the big lessons that since we've been friends that we've talked about is the first kind of the genre you got into. One of the most structured and difficult forms to write for is the TV sitcom, because everything happens within such a small amount of time with these breaks in between for commercials. And you ended up writing, sending in scripts, just trying things out, starving, but trying to do it, and sent in scripts, and you got you actually got scripts accepted at...
a show called Laverne and Shirley, which, unless you stay up very late and watch Nick at Night, most of you probably don't know, but it was sort of the I Love Lucy of its time. And I kind of came into it by accident. I'd written a couple of screenplays that I'd sold options on, and I was a freelancer. I was selling whatever kind of writing I could make a buck off, from magazine articles to soapbox ads. And I knew somebody at this show and submitted a spec script, and it turned out that it was a show that they had already, an idea that they had already bought and produced, but they liked the script that I turned in better than the one that they had made. So I got a couple of assignments from them. But what we were talking about earlier is, and again, I can't emphasize structure enough in any form, but particularly in situation comedy, you've got the ideal is to get 3 jokes to a page. You write 3 acts, so they're commercial. You sort of set up for commercial breaks, interruptions. I almost said the networks wouldn't like that, and commercial pauses, and there is a formula to doing it, which doesn't exclude the creativity involved in it, but you have to adapt your creativity to the structure, and it is one of the more difficult forms, I guess, any network television, but particularly situation comedy, because it's so condensed and you have to keep the momentum going and the enthusiasm going.
Well, I know that we always talk about, and as you may recall from Ben Garant the week before, and even back from Dave Willis, the idea of just keep working, keep driving yourself, keep writing, keep trying to make it out there is so important. And Rob pushed on and went even from doing what he was doing to writing trailers for films, which is, I think, the way we get him into doing what we're talking about now. And trailers, tell them how the structure works, and I'll cue one up.
Well, a trailer copy is very brief. It's almost like haiku. Not exactly in a rhythmic form, but it has to have a certain amount of rhythm. Alliteration helps, but it's all about describing what scenes you're going to see and putting it together in a very condensed form that hopefully doesn't get in the way of the visuals. And that's a problem, I think, that trailer writing, trailer production has evolved from the very crude, overly written ones in the early 50s to where the language becomes more and more sparse and really only serves to set up the visual.
Well, I have 100 films that Rob's worked on, but I thought one that seemed very different from what we just looked at in Gladiator was Lemony Snicket with our gent, Jim Carrey. And here's the trailer for that. And come on, baby, you can do this.
Sometimes the world can seem an unfriendly and sinister place. But believe us when we say that there is much more good in it than bad. And what might seem to be a series of unfortunate events may, in fact, be the first steps of a journey. our journey begins here, at the home of our new guardian.
Hello, hello, hello. I am your beloved Count Olaf.
3 orphans.
My dear
Violet. An unscrupulous guardian.
All I ask is that you do each and every little thing that pops into my head, while I enjoy the enormous fortune your parents left behind.
We're very concerned.
Based on the series of best-selling books, you're invited to discover
This way, to the reptile room.
a world built by imagination, ruled by invention, and strung together by a series of unfortunate events. DreamWorks Pictures and Paramount Pictures present Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey.
And then the unthinkable happened. Now that we're family, I can be the ultimate dad.
Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events.
And that's how it got presented to the public. This looked like a very difficult movie to make, too.
Hugely difficult for a number of reasons. I'll go into marketing later, but just from a production standpoint, it was filmed entirely indoors. So they had all of the, I don't know if you're going to show clips, but from there, everything from storms to a car stuck on the railroad tracks to, well, everything was filmed indoors. It was all designed stylistically because there was no environment that they really could have filmed in that could have replicated what Lemony Snicket, the author, had created. He created a time out of time, and the only way to do that was to build these very expensive sets. And lighting these very expensive sets took a great deal of time. Jim Carrey is a meticulous actor, and he would want to do take after take until he finally felt he got it.
But he wasn't the director.
He didn't know that. But no, Brad Silberling was the director, and Brad is a great guy and a very talented director. But when you're working with somebody like a Jim Carrey, you have to give him free rein, and that takes time.
So he would be saying we didn't get it right and do it over and over and over again.
He would be saying, I'd like to do it again.
And it would get done again.
It would get done.
And I imagine there's also the factor of children being involved.
Yeah, which is also difficult and also slows down production because you can only work children a certain number of hours a day, and they also have school to fit in, during those hours. So it was a slow process.
And how many snakes were involved?
There were about 100 snakes in the reptile room. Have you guys seen this movie? Has anybody? Yeah? So if you remember the reptile room, they really did have real reptiles. So about 100 snakes, one giant tortoise who they kept penned up at night in one of the storage rooms until he ate through the wall of his storage room, and they found him the next morning in the prop room. So they had to make other arrangements for the giant tortoise.
We talked a little bit in the other piece about some of the people who are extremely difficult to work with, and
you want me to go there?
Kinda. And
right,
you have to pacify them. Did you have a relationship with keeping Carrie and things happening?
Sometimes I work directly with the actors. Sometimes I will work with the actors and their assistants. But yeah, I have a relationship with most of almost like 99% of the actors who I have to work with. And Jim he's a sweetheart of a guy, but he's very focused, and when he's on a set during the day, he's one of those actors who likes to stay in character. Not to the extreme of some,
Well, he was 3 characters. Kind of a schizophrenic day.
It depended which character he was doing that day. He would be that character. But, you know, not to you know, the point of silliness, but to the point where you waited with, you know, I mean, my job is all about timing my questions and my approaches to these guys. If I want them to do something, I have to know when, by experience and instinct, to approach them and say, we have a 60 Minutes crew here. They're waiting for your interview. Is this a good time?
And you're a diplomat in the midst of all this. Are you actually, in this movie particularly, are you actually putting out press releases during the production, or does it all happen in post?
You generally put out a start of production story in which you frame the main themes of the movie, what you think are going to be most saleable points of the movie. So that's where the marketing campaign starts from. You do a paragraph, 2 paragraphs, describing the movie in a way that you think will make people want to come and see it. And then that goes to the studio, and they rewrite it and all that.
And more happens post. And
yeah, most of the writing happens post-production.
So in the midst of all this, though, you have to cultivate relationships with some pretty amazing divas, people who know they can get their way. And I thought maybe we'd plug in one more that we talked about earlier. Tell them about working with Jack Nicholson, and I'll cue up the bucket.
Oh, yeah. So Jack is totally unique among actors. There is nobody that I can think of in the business with his clout. And he has earned the right to call his shots. So on the bucket list, which is the first of 2 movies I worked with him on, he doesn't do any publicity. He says, you know, thanks a lot, kid, good luck, you know, I don't mind you doing this stuff, but I'm not going to do anything with it. But his process was he doesn't get picked up for work until 11 o'clock in the morning. And then Rob Reiner would finish what he was doing, come into Jack's trailer, and spend the next hour rewriting the scenes for the day with Jack. So Jack has that kind of influence and that kind of input. But he is an incredibly bright guy. If there is a Renaissance man in the business, it's Jack Nicholson. He's a writer, a painter, and just an all-around creative talent. So he's earned it. And the good thing for me was that Rob Reiner is the kind of director who likes to get home for dinner at 6. So the day would basically start around noon and end at 6 o'clock. So I like that.
This sounds good. Let me see if I can get this to pop up. And there it is. Okay, let's see. We put up, and here we go. And this is how you kind of conceptualized the bucket list for the public.
I run hospitals, not health spas. 2 beds to a room, no exceptions.
There was a survey once. 1,000 people asked if they could know in advance would they want to know the exact day of their death.
Who the hell is that? Who the hell are you?
96% of them said no.
Oh, God. What am I, in the morgue?
That was the first time I laid eyes on Edward Cole.
I want my own room.
You run hospitals, not health spas. 2 beds to a room, no exceptions.
Damned if I'm going to spend the next 3 weeks laying next to Zombie Boy.
My freshman philosophy professor assigned this exercise and called it a bucket list. We were supposed to make a list of all the things we wanted to do in our lives before we
kicked the bucket. Cutesy.
It's pointless now.
We could do this. We should do this.
This is living! I hate your rotten guts! Is he insane?
Depends.
You gonna drive it or buy it a dress?
Just getting to know each other.
I don't understand how you can run off with a total stranger.
I've got 45 years greased up under the hood of a car. I think I've earned some time for myself.
You got kids? I don't see her.
It's time.
Why are we, Oh, my God.
What are you so afraid of?
Just because I told you my story does not invite you to be a part of it.
Dear Edward, there's no way I can repay you for all you've done for me. So rather than try, I'm just going to ask you to do something else for me. Find the joy in your life. hate me? Not yet. We live, we die, and the wheels on the bus go round and round. Proud of you. Nobody cares what you think.
So you see what the real talent in bringing all this into focus is, and finding the heart of a movie. That's 2 minutes and 28 seconds that tell basically what it's about to people, that give them an idea of what it's going to be like, and yet tantalize them enough to get them to come and see the complete thing. We talked, did you have to travel a lot with that one, by the way?
I wish. They shot the entire thing in Los Angeles. They built the pyramids on top of a garage, a parking garage at the old Goldwyn Studios. They built the Great Wall of China on Mulholland Drive, off on a side street. The Taj Mahal was some fountain outside a museum in Pasadena. So we didn't go anywhere.
It was all Southern California, even though you travel the world.
Yeah, yep.
The whole thing of illusion.
Magic.
Yeah, the whole thing of illusion in the movies and perception, and the way you come up with a concept that not only describes a story in a very short period of time, but makes it appealing to people, is a huge part of this movie industry, of the storytelling industry. One of the things that I found intriguing, we talked about different kind of movies over the last couple of days, is retelling a true story. And the next one I want to show up is Frost Nixon. Tell us a bit about that movie while I cue it up.
That was a fascinating process. Ron Howard directed, and he's a great guy to work for and work with. He's very collaborative. It was interesting, though, we were just talking about actors staying in character. And Frank Langella, who is just a sweetheart of a human being, insisted on staying in character as Richard Nixon throughout the entire day. And you couldn't call him Frank or Mr. Langella. You had to address him either as Mr. President or Mr. Nixon. But we shot, that was also pretty much entirely in Southern California. We went to some interesting locations, including Nixon's Western White House, which was where, it's in San Clemente, and that's where he did half of his presiding from. And we also went to the Nixon Library in, I think it's San Ysidro or one of those Sans.
Well, let's this is how that, I mean, the idea here is that most people knew the history, knew the story, and yet what you're trying to do here is to say, yes, you know the story, but it's a lot more.
Yeah, you've never seen this side of it. Another difficulty with this is it was a stage play. So it's a whole other interesting skill in adapting a stage play to the screen. You have to open it up, and I think he did that very successfully.
So we're looking at a lot of different layers here. We're looking at historical drama, something that actually happened factually. We're looking at it as a stage play that gets adapted, and now it's made into something that we want people to come see on their own.
Good evening. I shall resign the presidency at noon tomorrow.
This is an historic day, the only time a president has ever resigned from office.
Nixon knew about the Watergate cover-up.
The man who has committed the greatest felony in American history will never stand trial.
I've had an idea for an interview, Richard Nixon.
You're a talk show host.
I spent yesterday watching you interview the Bee Gees. Weren't they terrific?
Why would I want to talk to David Frost?
I got $500,000.
Really?
Frost has hired 3 crack investigators.
Can I be crack one?
Can I be deep crack?
Can I shake his hand?
After everything he's done in this country? Are you kidding me?
Oh, pleasure to meet you.
Mr. President.
That was devastating. I mean, I don't think he's ever going to get over that.
Frost is just not in your class, sir. You're going to be able to rebuild your reputation.
This entire project is a joke.
I do hope that isn't coming out of your own pocket.
I wish my pockets were that deep. I'm in this for everything I've got.
There's a reason they call him Tricky Dick. Stand by to roll tape.
You had a pleasant evening last night?
Yes.
4, 3, 2.
Did you do any fornicating?
And Hugh David.
The American people need a conviction. I'd like to give Richard Nixon the trial he never had. Democracy depends on it.
We're not going to let that happen. We're going to make them choke on power and glory.
Why didn't you burn the tapes?
I didn't want to take any questions on Watergate.
Shut it down.
I will ruin you if it takes the rest of my life. What have I done?
If in this interview Nixon exonerates himself,
4,
that would be the worst crime of all.
3, 2. Hugh David.
Are you really saying the president can do something illegal?
I'm saying that when the president does it, that means it's not illegal.
I'm sorry?
Again, a historical piece that's all of a sudden made amazingly appealing, that has a whole new drama and storyline to it that has to come across here in 2 minutes and 31 seconds. They get people to go out and do it. So these cost $40, $50 million and or more. This one not as much, but and then has to
$50 million film, something like that.
Has to get the money back in. This one is especially hard because you're talking about just 2 characters, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. You had to frame it as a David and Goliath story. That this ridiculous TV talk show host brought down the man that nobody could bring down, which is ironic in these political times because Nixon looks like a moderate today, you know, but he was the evil giant back when. But that's the way you sell it, and they very cleverly, if you noticed, interspersed a couple of comedic beats because you don't want the perception to be that you're paying $10 to go in and take a history lesson. It has to appear entertaining.
And that's part of the thing. So you don't want to be too straight on some of these, too stern a lecture. You want to get in and have some insight into the humanity of the people.
Yeah, and I think that's the key to marketing most things. Is as you put it earlier, you want to get the Nixon that nobody knew. You want to get the under the skin of the historical figures, because otherwise you could read a textbook.
And all this is being administrated by somebody who just did a number of other historical pieces. Ron Howard, who's just done Apollo 13 and the like.
Yep.
And what is Opie like on the set?
He's great. Again, he's very bright, very focused. He has a business-like demeanor when he's working and a good sense of humor when he's not. He's not one of these high-stressed directors who, has to work keeping everybody on the edge of their chairs. But he's very focused, and he is very collaborative. So he has a cinematographer he trusts, sets a cinematographer off to set the cameras. He has an editor he trusts. We talked about the importance of editors before. People he works with fairly regularly. So he, like most good directors, has a vision for the movie. He knows what he wants. When he sees it in camera, he'll say, cut, print that one. And he's not afraid. His ego isn't so shaky that if somebody makes a suggestion, he's not willing to take it, which is why he's been able to work with Russell Crowe twice.
So how often, since directors know that you are part of the machine that makes the money for them, that makes the movie a success, How often will a director actually come to you and say, this is kind of where we're going, or give you a briefing? Or do you go to them first? How does it work?
What was interesting with Ron, I mean, normally I'll go to them with writings or whatever, whether it's the positioning paragraph, start a production story, questions about visiting press, anything like that. With Ron, I had met him the first week and chatted briefly, but we were sitting around, I think, at the Beverly Hilton, as a matter of fact, your old favorite hotel. And he came up to me during a lengthy camera setup, and we sat for 20 minutes talking about my ideas for, what were the most exploitable elements of the film, how we should position the film, what press we should have down, and all that stuff. So he's very engaged in all levels of the filming, which is not typical of filmmakers. Normally, during production, the director is focused on directing his movie, not lining up those elements that are going to sell the movie.
So he's thinking of the business.
He is very much cued into the business. I mean, he's been in it since, he was 5?
Correct, yeah.
So, he's very comfortable on a set and isn't afraid to distract himself by saying, okay, let's think 10 steps ahead to when we're going to be selling this movie.
You mentioned a term just a little bit earlier that probably passed by a lot of people. Explain this concept of positioning paragraph.
A positioning paragraph is something that you put in the initial press release that basically puts together in very few words why somebody should pay their money to go see this movie. And it has to be both targeted to the natural audience. Say, a movie like this is skewed older. It's, the over 30 crowd. But you want to ideally be able to broaden the perception of a movie to include as wide an audience as possible. So it's all about creating the perception of the movie to make people want to go see them.
In your opinion, you've worked with 100 directors or whatever. Who runs the loosest and most comfortable ship? We talked about the worst ones in our last session, but who do you think has the loosest ship on a set?
Oh, I think Richard Donner by far. I worked with him on The Goonies and another movie called Radio Flyer, which was actually kind of a heavy movie about a couple of abused children who escape into flights of fantasy. But Donner every day is another fraternity party. He's a prankster. His assistant director has the difficult job of getting him to focus. Come back here, stop playing around at the catering table. But, saying that he's also one who knows, he has a vision for the film, and, he just doesn't take it terribly seriously. There are others as well who do.
So that's kind of the opposite ends of it. On one end is a director who's talking to you at the very beginning of it, talking about positioning and where it's going to be, and another who's just caught up in the joy of making the film.
Donner, hey kid, have another donut,
And so, where does the studio and the marketing people and the people who are putting up the cash, when do they start coming to you to start balancing things out or create the image?
Generally early on. I mean, I'm in collaboration with the studio marketing department pretty much every day in one aspect or another. And I don't shape all this stuff alone. I'll generally turn in, a first draft of how I think we might be able to sell this movie, and they'll come back with a dozen other ideas. So it's a constant collaboration with the marketing department.
I was just thinking, as we were talking, I'm changing things around a bit, but I was just thinking about these kind of egos and things going on, and I thought, American Gangster, maybe we should go ahead and show that. Tell them about American Gangster and who the principals were.
The principals were Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe. And Russell, everybody knows his reputation for being difficult. But he's also a tremendously creative guy, and his clashes, his well-known clashes with directors and filmmakers produce a kind of friction that elevates the movie. It certainly was the case with Gladiator. It can work against the process as well when sometimes a director doesn't feel like he's able to communicate with the actor, or the actor isn't doing what he wants to do, and then it sort of torpedoes downhill. But Denzel Washington is also another huge ego, and another very talented actor, whereas Russell's, at least on that movie, and I've not worked with Denzel on other movies, but at least on that movie, Russell's headbutting was more creative. Denzel was a little bit more reluctant to engage in the process, and he had his own timetable, and he would come out of his trailer when he wanted to. And so that created some on-set conflagrations.
Did they meet? Did they have to interact?
They had very few scenes together, but interestingly, they had done a previous movie, something called Virtuosity, I think, was, and Denzel admires Russell as an actor, and I'm sure vice versa. I mean, Denzel is one of the great actors. But they had very few scenes together. It was almost like making two separate movies. We were doing the Richie Roberts part of the story, which was Russell's character, and when we were doing the Frank Lucas, the gangster part of the film, they had two scenes in court, and then a scene where the Denzel character gets out of jail, and I think that was about it.
Did you ever act as kind of a liaison of information back and forth? Was that part of your thing on this?
Are you talking about, did I break up fights?
Yes. Well,
no, there wasn't really any friction between the two of them. But it was interesting. We shot at least half the movie in Harlem, and Denzel liked to be a part of that community. That's overstating it. He liked to show that he was available to that community. So he would go out and sign autographs and things like that. And there were times when he was needed back on set. And even though my job isn't technically to wrangle the actors, there were times that I would say, thank you very much, Denzel. I think they need you back on set.
And somehow out of these two very different movies came a single one, and this is how it got presented to the public.
The man I worked for had one of the biggest companies in New York City. He didn't own his own company. White man owned it, so they owned him. Nobody owns me, though. The most important thing in business is honesty.
Bribery, extortion,
integrity, hard work,
murder, racketeering,
family. Never forgetting where we came from.
Who is this guy?
See, you are what you are in this world. That's either one or two things. Either you're somebody, or you ain't nobody.
Whose house is that, Frank?
That is your house, Mama.
I want what you got, Uncle Frank. I want to be you. My investigation indicates that Frank Lucas is above the mafia. Who does he work for? Which family? He's not Italian, he's black.
No black man has accomplished what the American mafia hasn't in 100 years.
They tried to kill my wife.
Frank Lucas is the most dangerous man walking the streets of our city.
This is my home. My country. Frank Lucas don't run from nobody. This is America.
thus came a single movie out of it. Well, I know we're getting toward the end of our time, but these have all been really big budget, gigantic blockbusters, and yet sometimes a big star will agree to appear in a smaller piece and an independent piece. So I wanted to show very quickly what you did and experienced in The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Fantastic.
Tell them what about the film.
Oh, I loved working. That was just fun. Four, terrific actors: Ewan McGregor, George Clooney, Kevin Spacey, and Jeff Bridges, and they all did it for the love of the script and the love of the material. And
these are both based on another one based on a true story. We had Frost Nixon, American Gangster, and now this.
That was what was sort of amazing about this movie, is that it was the story. I don't know if anybody knows, was there was this unit in the Army of psychological operations that tried to train a group of soldiers into using telepathic powers to conduct warfare. And it actually existed. And this isn't exactly a documentary, fictionalized, as you'll see.
Yeah. We have to go through a commercial first. There we go.
This is not part of the movie. I don't even think they let you fast forward on those things.
No, you just
have to sit through it.
Yeah, here we go.
Anyway, we shot this one in Puerto Rico and New Mexico. New Mexico State.
My name is Bob Wilton. I'm a journalist. I've been investigating a story about a classified government program. So what you're saying is that you were a psychic spy?
A Jedi warrior.
I'd heard that the U.S. government was training psychic soldiers, and that Lynn Cassidy was the best of the best.
I've been reactivated. I'm on a mission.
I could come. Lynn's story was unbelievable, crazy, and completely true.
We have to dream a new America that no longer has an exploitative view of everyone. You will be a psychic weapon. Feel it, yes! We must create warrior monks who can pass through walls and see into the future.
Congratulations, Scotty. Sorry it doesn't work out between you two.
What are you doing? Cloud bursting. Keeps me in shape. And it's gone.
Geez, you had like the whole desert to drive in, Lynn.
Please, please. Thank you for picking us up.
How are we gonna stop them? They've got guns. We're Jedi. We don't fight with guns, we fight with our minds.
Holy.
I went looking for a story, and my friend Lynn brought me an adventure.
It's okay, we're Americans. We're here to help you.
What happened?
I think I just ran him over. Oh, crap.
Lieutenant Colonel Django used funds from the project's black budget to procure prostitutes.
That's a lie.
And to get drugs for himself and his men.
Well, the hooker thing is definitely a lie.
And so they made, with 4 big stars, they made that for how much?
About $18 million. It actually turned out to be a $12 million movie after tax incentives. And all the stars, of course, waived their fee. And the movie cashed in pretty good. I think it made 70, 80 million worldwide.
And so how did you present that to the public, like this?
Well, that was difficult because it's a satire, and satires are hard to sell. So you had to kind of present it as a true fairy tale, emphasizing the fact that, this is unbelievable but true.
Well, we've only got about 5 minutes left, so I'd like to see if anybody has any questions before we call it up. Anybody, raise the house lights, please, so we can see folks. All right. Question? Somebody here at the mic? Go ahead.
I have a question about when you're working on trailers. Okay, so So a while back, I saw this like parody of like how a trailer. But do you have like a formula when you write trailers? Is there like?
Well, I haven't written trailers for a long time, but there's always a formula, and it's as I said before, the idea with a trailer is you let the story tell itself, and where it needs narrative enhancement or narrative, some kind of narrative for continuity for it to make sense, you insert it there. But trailers are, for the most part, the creation of very clever editors who say this clip would go with that clip, and then eventually the marketing department joins in and creates a narrative out of it that they think is going to be most appealing to the audience for that film.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How has all this work affected, for good or for bad, how you see movies? I mean, I'm sure it must be a totally different experience.
Great question. I was just telling Jim earlier that, you know, it's hard for me to watch a movie that I've worked on and be objective about it, because I'm always seeing pieces. It's hard to see the movie as a whole. So to a small degree, it affects my enjoyment of movies. On the other hand, I'm, you know, thinking, oh, there's a scene there that they cut out that was so much fun to film. So it's a bit of an experiential travel log for me, movies that I've worked on.
And how hard is it to let go of a movie? I know you were saying that usually as soon as the movie wraps, you're out of the loop again.
Yeah, that's not entirely the case, because people, I officially stop getting paid a couple of weeks after the movie wraps, but press and various other people will make inquiries, you know, a year later. So I stay somewhat involved with the movie, but as far as an emotional attachment, you know, it's always about the people, and then I'm as pleased as anybody else to see the product be successful or
work.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, guys, we're right at the end of the time. I just want, once again, say thank you to Rob Harris.
Thank you, guys.
See you next Monday.